Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and today I want to talk about, or rather wrap up the Delve League as a whole, the positives and negatives, and mostly just talk about the experience I had in Delve League, or maybe what could have been different. And it's largely going to be about the negatives because overall I'd say the Delve League as a whole, for me, was my favorite league, and I'd say there were a lot of positives to take away from, but, you know, not much point in just saying how great it was. We're not going to learn anything from that. It's about going about the negatives and possibly what could be better in future leagues, or mistakes that keep on happening throughout these leagues that happen from GGG, and mainly the fun that we could have but potentially don't get to because of certain mistakes that get made. So I'll be just talking over the back of some Delve footage off of the very last day that I was playing with my Blade Vortex character, but I will start off with the positives. Like I said, I think it's my favorite league to come out from Path of Exile. By far, I would say at this point, it is my favorite league. I clocked in more hours this league than any previous one. I played every single day for the whole 90 days. However long it lasted, and I found it very easy, like very easy to log in and do my hours, because this is a job for me, but I still do enjoy what I do most days to a certain extent. And some leagues are a lot more challenging to clock in lots of hours than others. This one though, Delve, I was in 6 to 8 hours a day, every single day, happily, and I made about 21 or 22 level 90 plus characters, which is by far a record for me for a league, because I was having so much fun just making more and more characters and trying out lots of different skills, specs, ascendancies, and also trying to delve plenty. So that's the biggest positive I'd say with the Delve League. It really made endgame pretty enjoyable, because instead of just pure grinding and mapping like you normally would have done, except for maybe incursion where you do a few little incursions, you got to really take a break from your mapping system and start delving a bunch, which is just thick, juicy packs of monsters in more or less linear layouts that just feel good to clear. So you do, 10, 15, 20 maps or something, maybe go for an Elder proc, and then break that up by doing a bunch of delve once you've earned some sulfite, and it doesn't feel like you're grinding the end game anywhere near as much. So that's why primarily I could make so many characters and get so many higher level characters as opposed to other leagues, because I was having so much fun in the end game for an actual change. So there was also a bunch of extra new content, basically, that is Delve. So there's a lot of new monsters that we haven't seen before, and a lot of new bosses, some of which were very fun to fight if you saw them. And there was a lot of good encounters, like the actual nodes themselves had fun new encounters that we haven't done before. That involved some new monsters here or there, new attacks, new spells, all kinds of basically just extra content. Compare it to something like, let's say, the early days of Path of Exile League's Onslaught League, for example, which is just everything's a little bit faster, and that's it, right? That was the league. So this is just on another level compared to what we used to get as far as league content is concerned, and they have been stepping it up, I think, just about every league, giving us more and more content. For the most part, every new league is always going to give you a bunch of different new stuff to do. And this one being, I would say, by far the largest new piece of content we've had, specifically from a league modifier. So there's a lot to do there. And other than that, another real big bonus of the Delve is it's visually pretty stunning. There was the rework for the shadows and the lighting and all that, and inside these caves, these depths, it's actually really quite pretty if you have the computer to handle it. Obviously not everyone will, but it did actually look really good. And then lastly, I'd say probably the biggest benefit here was a new powerful crafting system in the fossil system. So similar to, let's say, an Essence League, it did really change the game, or the meta game, for crafting, because fossils really were quite powerful in what they achieved in your crafting of items. You could very easily target, select certain modifiers, certain types of items, certain crafts, and it let you create some pretty bananas items out there. And that was in a lot of cases very fun and really enhanced some of your characters. So plenty of characters I made in the past I could then bring back in Delve League and make them at a much stronger sort of level because of a few different cool new Delve crafts that were now available to you. So besides that, there's one other thing, that's probably just that there was a lot of loot in this league. So thanks to a lot of these nodes, like the currency nodes and various item nodes and then actual special nodes that you'd come across, there was a lot of loot floating around. I had more div cards in this league than ever before, and it was actually kind of overwhelming on some of the crap level of div cards, just how many I actually had. So there was a lot of loot, a lot of extra content, a lot of fun challenge. Now, so overall, amazing league. I'd say still easily the best one we've had, but there are a bunch of negatives. I guess we can start with what you're looking at here is the all boss. This one is not the first one I encountered. This one is someone else's that let me try against their all, because I only ever found one in the end, and it was a very, very hard one. This one is pretty normal and actually pretty easy. So I had to learn the entire fight on a very hard one. Trying this very easy one was actually kind of surprising because I could face tank almost every attack. I didn't have to play very well. The attacks weren't very large. He wasn't very fast. Overall, it was a very manageable fight, and if I took a worse character in against this, I'd probably have a decent chance of success, whereas this character was built specifically for the very tough all that I had. So the real problem here is I didn't see a lot of the endgame content that Delve was there to offer, and that is a boss like this one, the hardest boss, I only saw one time, and that was in the last couple of days of the 90 days that I played. As I mentioned, I leveled about 22 level 90 plus characters, and I did a lot of delving, which I'll show you in a few minutes time. So I did quite a lot of delving, and I came across this endgame all boss one time at the very end. I came across the Abyssal boss, the Abyssal Lich boss maybe 4 times or so, and the Vaal High Council boss maybe something like 8 times. So I did see them a fair few times. All I only saw one time, and bear in mind this is with the vastly buffed rates of encounters compared to the start of the league. For the first couple weeks or so, people started complaining we didn't see any bosses, and then they buffed the rate by a lot, so you should be able to see them more. Now that just is actually a scary thought, that to begin with it was much worse than this, and that's how it went in, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. Math was going to play, 8 hours a day. He's not going to see a boss. That's fine. That's okay. And then people started complaining, and they thought, oh, well, people aren't seeing bosses that often. Maybe we should up the rate. That's actually kind of a problem with this type of league, and with some previous leagues, that the content's out there. It looks really cool. It looks really fun. You want to engage with it. You're not allowed to because it's gated behind RNG. So the RNG gating content is actually one of the biggest gripes with these types of leagues for me, because once I got to fight this boss, I had a blast. I loved it. It's exactly what I wanted to do. It's what I wanted to do in this type of game, but it's RNG gated. Like, what do I do about that? I could delve deeper, and then it costs a lot more sulfite. I get to delve less often, and chances are I'm coming across against a almost unbeatable boss. So that's not really meshing together very well. And another good example is the Abyssal League, where you occasionally encounter depths. When you went in, you might be able to see a Lich, and initially the Lich spawns were pathetic. You were almost never seeing this Lich boss, and it just wasn't going to happen for you. And then the good items that dropped off of the boss was also very rare, the 2 socket items. They had to buff those rates some few weeks into the leagues as well, because people weren't seeing liches at all. The challenge to kill 50 liches by the end of the league, I tried to do by myself. I got 49 liches done by playing 6 to 8 hours every single day and trying to kill every lich. I got 49 out of 50 liches done. I couldn't even do that challenge by myself because I just didn't see them often enough. So some of the rare things does tie into this as well here in the background. Completing delve encounters. This is specifically going into certain zones and completing a node or an encounter. After playing that long and delving that much, I'd still only seen 5 out of 6 of those encounters. I don't even know what most of those are. Haunted Tomb, Crystal Spire, all that sort of shit. I have no idea. I tried to look for them and couldn't really find much there. So just naturally, I wasn't going to find those. Maybe I had to go even further down. I got to about 450, which for my, taste for my sort of playstyle was actually pretty deep, because for the most part I got to level 83 zones and then started doing lots and lots of sideways delving. I wanted to specifically do more delving, so I wanted to actually get a lot of the fun delving encounters happening, so I didn't want to have to spend lots of time going to maps and getting sulfite and then coming back and running like 3 little delve nodes, because that's what would happen when you go deeper. And that's kind of leads on to the next problem, which was sulfite. Sulfite was a pain in the dick. To start with, sulfite, once you started getting to the sort of deeper levels, was really annoying to go for. You had to get quite a lot of sulfite for the lower nodes, and it meant that you weren't engaging with the content anywhere near as much as you'd like. Now, to some extent, that is fine. You do probably need to balance it something like that, because if you could just delve all day long, what's the point of doing maps? You probably wouldn't do maps anymore, because delving is just a superior method of getting XP, loot, and probably having fun. So there is some necessary balance there for sure, but it definitely felt like we were forced to grind sulfite a lot more early on before they changed some of the sulfite rates, and then it ended up being a bit better for sure, but potentially could still be done a bit better, because it did still feel very much like a grind occasionally. If you wanted to delve deeper, you still had to just do the most efficient high tier map and just go for sulfite basically, rather than care about the map altogether. So then, while I talk a bit more about some of the other things, this is going to be me in the background from a previous day showing off all of the 83 plus delving that I did. I did a lot of sideways delving to the right and then a lot to the left. In total, I saw something like 60, maybe 60-ish sort of Vile abyssal outposts, those sorts of things. A lot of the time I saw just straight up little squares that contained nothing, which is really frustrating when you're going in a certain direction for a while trying to look for one of these, and then eventually you just find that, and that's your RNG for the day there. Saw a lot of those. So yeah, something like 60 or so outposts, and out of those 60, I think I had 4 or 5 Primevale Ruins, 3 of which were on the last freaking day that I could actually start going deeper and deeper. So the fact that I just barely saw Primevale Ruins, didn't really get to interact with that content, was super disappointing, and I really wanted to fight the All Boss, and there's a bunch of challenges associated with the All Boss, which there's no way I could have got done by myself, because I never saw the boss enough times to actually complete them, to learn the fight, or to do it on an easy enough fight. So it was layered of RNG on top of RNG layers, because if you ended up finding the boss and it had 2 hard mods, well, you're probably just never actually killing it, because I am supposed to be at this point an above average Path of Exile player, and it took me a shitload of attempts to kill the hard ore that I had, and it was a pretty overpowered build, at least for my standards, to be able to do it as well. So a mere mortal wouldn't be expected to clear any of these tough level of alls. So yeah, that's basically the complaint about all the RNG fiesta of bosses. The RNG fiesta then gets spread into the fossils. I didn't complete the fossil challenge either, because I didn't find some of the rarer fossils to actually use and tick off as part of the challenge. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Buy the fossils? Great, that feels good. Some of them weren't even all that powerful. They were good, but they weren't like so overpowered that you shouldn't be finding them. So that was a bit annoying too. 4 socket resonators throughout the entire league. I found 2 in the end, 1 of each chaotic and alchemic, and it took me a month, I think, to find my first one. Didn't do much with them either. I mean, they're a bit stronger, and in some cases, with some specific items, you can craft it and it becomes a slightly better chance of getting really good stuff. But that was way too rare as well, which then brings me to the last really rare thing, which was the Reliquary Keys. So they put in the Reliquary Keys for your legacy items, your classic items, that sort of shit, and I found 2 of those for the entire league. And there's still a lot of garbage from those keys. So they said that it would be weighted evenly. So there's like 150 items. You got a 1 in 150 chance of finding the Headhunter, for example, rather than it being rarer than some of the other items. Problem is, like 148 of those items are still pure garbage, and you could even get them through other means. So you could pop a key and then get an abyssal helm that you can get from a delve right now. An abyss right now, and it's worth nothing. That was kind of a problem, because the keys were never worth opening in the end. people would buy them up to gamble when they were quitting the league. That raised the prices on those keys. So the keys were never worth opening because you were much better off, had much better return off of simply selling the key. So not only were they incredibly rare, but they were incredibly not worth opening because, yeah, most of the items were crap. You weren't going to return anything, and keys got vastly inflated on price thanks to people just gambling on them because they got nothing better to do with their currency, or if they want to quit, they want to actually just, throw away their currency in the most fun gambling way possible. So they got very expensive and they were not worth opening. So there's a lot of RNG that went on there, but as far as the other negatives, I would say the fossils took up too much space, same with the Resonators, so it was pretty tough to jam all of that shit into your stash tabs, even as people who have lots of stash tabs. If you have barely any stash tabs, that entire system was just a real pain for you because you can have one entire tab of fossils quite easily without even being a fossil farmer, and then several tabs of Resonators, and you were supposed to use them as you went along, I guess, but then it comes into another problem where the crafting system was good and it was powerful. Perhaps it was too powerful, because I wasn't allowed to craft with anything else other than fossils and Resonators anymore, because it was better by far than crafting with any other system anymore. I, really wasn't allowed to use essences, wasn't allowed to use chaos spam or alteration spam anymore. Mind you, I still did that plenty, but I'm not allowed to do it as far as the community is concerned, because every time I'd start, people would come into my channel and say, why aren't you using fossils? Don't you know fossils are better? Are you stupid? Use some fossils. So it was just straight up so much better to use fossils that it was accepted as law to be using fossils over essences and other currency. I still did my own stuff because I love alteration spamming. It's a bit more drawn out, a bit easier, a bit funner than having to buy up a bunch of fossils, buy up a bunch of Resonators, and spend many chaos into those systems to finally just click it once and get nothing. So it didn't feel very good because it was a bit tedious, at least in my opinion, putting all those fossils into the Resonators and then clicking it once, having a 20C attempt at one item and then getting nothing for it, felt kind of bad. So I was more in preference of an essence-based system, which is a single click. Even then, that was still hard to buy lots of. Or the currency-based system where you can actually just, alteration spam for the exact mod you want and then regal, and it's just a bit more of a fun crafting overall. But the fossils were extremely powerful, which is a good thing kind of, in that it's different and fun and you can target your stuff, but they were also too powerful in that you probably didn't want to do anything besides that. So I'm not too sure what, the solution there really is. Just a bit of a gripe, I suppose, personally, in that I wasn't really allowed to, as far as other people were concerned, do any other type of crafting because fossils were so goddamn good. And then I have already done quite a lot of ranting, but the last thing I'll really touch on is quite a lot of the time it is still very unpolished content being released in these leagues, and maybe they're stressed for time, pushed for time. That's fine, they're doing their best and they still put out amazing content. Like I said, Delve, incredible. I loved it, even from the start when it was kind of crappy. So as I was saying, they're stressed for time and they don't necessarily test everything, and therein lies the flare system when we were first given Delve. It was just god-awful. The way you'd have to position your character facing a certain way, throw your flare in a certain direction, the flare would take time to travel and then land. It would have very just bad sort of illumination areas to begin with. Overall, it was just so bad that anyone that played hardcore through that and suffered through it deserves a fucking medal, because it would have been terrifying, clunky, awkward, and just straight up unfun. There's no way you could have thought through the net system with Bestiary how much everyone hated it, thought it was a good idea to do something kind of similar. And that's what it felt like we were given, something similar to the net system, which was just something you don't want to be doing in a game like this. It was fixed up to be a lot better. It's still, arguably not the greatest thing ever, the flare system, the way it was, the darkness mechanics, so I still think it's very hardcore unfriendly the way it is, but it was a lot better and a lot more intuitive once it got fixed up. So it's as if it wasn't really tested too much, because no one that would have played that in a game like Path of Exile could have possibly said, yeah, no, this fits, let's do it, ship it away. So that's basically the rundown of my bitch fest about Delve League. It's hard not to bitch about it, even though it was so good. Like I said, many props. I still loved it. I would play it all over again. I was sad that it was over because there was so much delving to still be done, and I was still having fun, especially when I finally came across the bosses. I wanted to come across more bosses, but there is definitely some things to look back on and hopefully learn from, and understand that it's still a lot of stuff to improve on, even at its core. Just RNG gated content, stuff like that definitely isn't what we're looking for in these leagues. We all just want to get in there, face the fun new content, and have fun trying out the new stuff that they're going to give us, rather than hope to fall into it or buy our way into seeing it through other people's encounters, potentially other people who've played a lot longer. So Delve, I'm still giving it a 9 out of 10, even though, you know, it's my favorite league, so in theory it should be a 10 out of 10, right? But I mean, obviously there's problems, so it loses a point because problems were had. But for me, it was my favorite league. It is definitely the best they've put out so far, and that's basically happened with every consequential league. For me, most of the time, I think just about every league they've put out since Breach has been just about better, or at least more fun and engaging to play. Yes, Breach was amazing and set a huge standard, but just going through Breach over and over again isn't exactly what you want to do. You do want to have the new content, and more often than not, with the new leagues, they were delivering and making it more fun than the previous one, because usually each league would also encompass every previous league and let you play them all together, even if they're slightly reduced in the size of the content they may have delivered before. That said, yeah, they are, I think, usually getting better, and I expect nothing less from Betrayal. I think it'll probably be the best league yet if it incorporates all the previous leagues, at least to some extent, and gives us a bunch of new shit. So hope you suffered through the rant video just fine. Maybe you agree with some of it, maybe you agree with none of it. That's fine, I just had to get it off my chest. I don't usually talk about a league wrap up, but this one was kind of so big and a little bit controversial here or there that I thought I had to get my opinions out there. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in Betrayal League, and see you next time.